Hey everyone, today I'm doing another oil change on the Corolla. Now this is not going to be a typical oil change video like my other one or other ones you may have seen on the internet. This one's going to be a little bit different. Now, in my other video, I talked about with this Corolla, Toyota says it's okay to do 10,000 mile oil changes if you run synthetic oil and if you don't meet any of the severe duty criteria, like excessive idling, very short trips, towing, things like that. Basically, for the most part, if you're doing a lot of light driving or a lot of highway driving, you can qualify for 10,000 mile oil changes. Now, everybody on the internet seems to have a different opinion on this, and a lot of people still to this day vehemently disagree that 10,000 mile oil changes are the worst thing you can do to your car. You're going to wreck it. It's a lot of people think it's some big conspiracy theory with the car companies to have you ruin the car right when it gets out of warranty, and then you're going to blow up the engine, and you have to replace the engine, replace the car, whatever you want to do. Obviously, oil has come a long way since the days of 3,000 mile oil changes. Technology has gotten better. The oil has gotten better. Everything's gotten better with vehicles. So a lot of people are still kind of stuck in that 3,000 mile, even though manufacturers are recommending 5,000, 7,500, even up to 10,000. We're seeing a lot now. So this is not an oil analysis I'm going to do, but I've been doing the 10,000 mile oil changes on this car since day one, because Toyota recommends it and says it's okay as long as I'm doing mostly highway and I am using synthetic oil, which I use. I always use Mobil 1 in the weight they recommend. So I took the oil pan and I cleaned it out thoroughly, and I have this filter that has this little screen on the bottom. It's a pretty tight mesh screen. So what I'm going to do is when I get all the oil out of the car in here, I'm going to run it through this and see if there's any sort of varnish buildup, because people claim that you're going to get varnish and gum buildup and there's just going to be junk in the oil. So we're going to run a little test and see. Obviously, this is not a scientific test, but I just want to see what comes out in the oil. Is there any sort of indication at all of any gumming or varnish buildup or any sort of buildup that is inconsistent with the way the oil is? So I'll go ahead, I'll take the oil out of the car, we'll run it through here. I'll also inspect the oil filter element itself for any sort of buildup inside the filter itself. Alright, so I got the oil filter out of the car now. Let's try to take a look under the light, a close-up look. Now, from what I can tell, there's absolutely no buildup between the pleating. I went ahead and I pulled this one apart a little bit more so you can get a better look. And from what I'm seeing on the camera, through the light, there is absolutely no indication of any sort of varnish or any buildup whatsoever. I would imagine it would most likely build up here on the very corners of the pleating. You can see the actual fibers of the filter itself, but I'll break another one apart and take a look at it, but from what I'm seeing, there's absolutely nothing here to indicate there is any sort of buildup at all. So you can get a nice good look in the light, and you can see all those little small fibers. That's the actual filter material itself, but there is no indication whatsoever of any sort of buildup on any of the pleating on the filter itself. I mean, you can even kind of see, so tilt it into the light, you can see on the inside as well, there's nothing built up. I mean, the filter actually still looks like it's in pretty good shape. It doesn't look like there's a lot of stuff, a lot of dirt buildup on it itself. And the oil is still draining out of the car, so I'll go ahead and when that gets finished, and then I'll run it through that filter and we'll see what it looks like. Alright, before I put the oil filter back in, I figure we'll also look inside the cap as well. I'll try to focus the light, but it's hard with this light. It doesn't come out that great on camera, but you can see in there, there's also no indication of any sort of oil buildup. Now, there's only 80,000 miles on this car. It's not a ton, but I think it's enough where if 10,000 mile oil changes were really causing a problem, you would start to see some sort of indication, and there's absolutely nothing here to indicate that oil or varnish or anything is building up and breaking down and causing deposits in the engine at all. Even minor deposits, there's nothing here to indicate that. That little bit of sheen is just some of the oil that's left on the surface, but overall this thing looks tremendously clean. There's nothing in here to indicate that the oil is starting to build up and break down and leave deposits inside the engine. So the oil's almost done draining, and we'll go filter that through and see what comes out in it. Alright, so I ran the oil through. You see it's still kind of draining down the pan itself into that funnel with a screen on the bottom, and so far from what I can tell, there's nothing there. There's nothing to indicate the oil is breaking down and gumming up at all. It's still kind of dripping in there a little bit. I found a little piece of crud. I don't think it was car related. I don't know if it was just junk that fell off the bottom of the car while I was draining the oil, but there's really nothing there. I mean, there's nothing to look at. It actually poured through here a little bit better than I thought. I thought it was going to take a little while, but this oil's pretty thin, so it went through it fairly quickly. But there is nothing there. I mean, there's a little bit of oil at the bottom. I think that's just a little bit of residual sitting there. This pan doesn't want to move. And we look okay. I mean, that's about as close as I can really get the camera without putting it in the oil. And we're looking pretty good. I mean, we've seen people take valve covers and cam covers off, and the oil has completely broken down in cars, and it's totally coated everything with like a sludge. But there's nothing here to even indicate at all that there's any sort of junk or sludge buildup at all whatsoever. So the oil's still flowing nicely. It's not black. It is, it's dark. It's contaminated. It's noticeably brown, but it's not black at all. It's not. It probably still has a significant amount of life on it. But synthetic oils have come a very long way. And like I said before, not everybody really qualifies for 10,000-mile oil changes. You got to run synthetic oil, and you got to really be, for the most part, doing highway driving, and not a ton of stop and go or anything like that. So hope you enjoyed the video. Thanks for watching.